So the topic today is surviving and thriving during the pandemic and beyond. So I'm trying to offer some practical strategies to cope with aging, which we're all experiencing at this moment, the uncertainty of the pandemic and life itself, and the everyday challenges of life. So it's been quite a year that we've all been through, and you're all survivors. And I feel like an imposter because I know in this virtual room, there's so much wisdom you all share, and you all are survivors. So you're all doing things to cope and to thrive already. So I hope it's not all repetition or review for you. And so I'm going to try to present what I feel have been helpful for myself, my patients, and the people I've come across in life, adapting these life skills to the challenges ahead of us. I remember about a year ago, I was in Metrotown and I was seeing these little stickers, and I realized they weren't stickers; they're actually permanent fixtures on the linoleum on the mall floor. So I thought, oh, I didn't think it was going to be lasting this long, but they're still there. We're still physically distancing, and at the beginning of the pandemic, we were trying to be really enthusiastic. We wore our PPE. So this is a photo of me enthusiastically wearing my Captain America PPE. But it's all kind of grown wary for all of us. So trying to offer a few things to encourage you and help us all get through this together. So 3 key things I think we need to remember during the pandemic is, number 1, you are not alone, even though we're all in our separate places. In spirit and in social connections, we are still together. Number 2 is you have the strength and the support to make it through. And thirdly, together, we're going to come through this stronger and more connected than ever. So we're not alone. You're part of a greater whole. And how we're feeling is a normal response to the circumstances we're all going through. And you have the strength and support to make it through. With this great organization and with all the facilities and supports in your own community. The family docs, the divisions of family doctor in Vancouver, Burnaby, and all the areas throughout BC are available. So reach out to them. That's the divisions of family practice. They're in all of your communities. We've been working with our community and all the stakeholders to try to look after everyone socially, financially, emotionally, because we're all suffering, but many are suffering in different ways at both stages of the spectrum. We have the ability to manage our emotions, and we can expand our perspectives, and we have the community supports that I mentioned to support everyone. And what we really learned is that we are better together. And I really believe that we're going to come through this stronger and more connected than ever before. We're going to emerge with a renewed appreciation of one another, of our communities, our sense of connection, and with renewed compassion for everyone. So we're not alone in how we're feeling. We're all feeling quite anxious and stressed with all the uncertainty and worries about our own health, that of our loved ones and neighbors, about many suffering with housing and finances, with businesses closing. We're feeling sad and we're grieving those we've lost and missing the people, the rituals and the activities that really give our life everyday meaning. Many of us have been having difficulty sleeping, waking up in the middle of the night, having crazy dreams. And many of us have been feeling lonely and isolated, and at times feeling helpless and sometimes hopeless. But what have we learned? I'd like to share this with friends and patients of what we've learned during the pandemic. I think what we've really learned is what we value most, and it's really that our relationships, above anything else, matters absolutely the most, more than anything else. And I like to reflect on what's on your list. What's your to-do list? Because that's something to look forward to. We've had a poster in our office about upcoming events, the post-pandemic party to be announced. So still to be announced when that will be. But you probably have a list of things that you want to do, like be able to go to the community center, the local senior center. It's a really hub for feeling connected again with our community, or going back to church or religious services, or just having a hug with your favorite people. So we all kind of have this to-do list. So it's kind of nice to reflect on what we're going to do soon when this pandemic is under control. But really, the list we should be making is our who is on your to-be with list, those favorite people that you really miss. I really miss not seeing my dad in person, not being able to give him a hug. This is the longest I've ever gone without giving my dad a hug. But I've talked to him frequently on the phone and then seen him at a distance on special occasions, but really miss that physical presence that we all miss. So think about who you have on your to be with list. And while you're waiting to be with them again, call them up, connect with them any way that you can, because that makes a difference, just hearing one another's voice and knowing that we care. I want to introduce kind of 3 key shifts that I think are really helpful for us to manage at this time. Number 1 is moving from that perspective of the fixed mindset to what we call the growth mindset. So the fixed mindset is that belief that our ways of thinking, our ways of coping, and our abilities that's the way they are. They're fixed and they're not going to get any better. So that if you fail on a test or make a mistake, you think that it's your own failure, it's a quality that you'll always have. The growth mindset is that reminder that we always retain the ability to change and grow. And when we have frustrations, challenges, or even failures, that's an opportunity to learn and to grow. So I'll talk about some ways that we can continue to grow and learn, and how getting older is not just growing older and it's not a downhill battle. It's actually continued growth in our emotional wisdom and what we learn and our connections with one another. So moving from that fixed mindset to the growth mindset. Moving again from a sense of helplessness that we've all felt at different times to a sense of agency or ability to manage and to feel empowered individually and connected with the people around us. And moving away from this feeling of isolation, which we are in physically, to that greater sense of connectedness, who we really are as part of our community of loved ones and the community with one another. That you are not just one small person all by yourself, but you're an integral part of the greater whole. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about aging, and I feel more strongly about this the older I get. So what is aging? Well, it's obviously a part of life that we have to accept. But aging is really changing, which is what life is. We're constantly changing, and that's not necessarily bad. So patients are always coming in just pretty well every day on the phone now or on the video. The doctor will say, is this due to aging, this ache in my hip or my knee? Is this change on my skin due to old age, or is this change in my posture due to old age? I try not to say that it's due to aging or old age. I give other reasons, like this is wear and tear on your joints. This is due to sun exposure or sunlight. This is due from laughing too much. Or this is due to gravity. So a lot of people think of aging like this. So the upper part of the curve, when we're young, we're growing, we're learning, and then we hit 20, and then from there it's all downhill. That's not the way I see it. I see the growth and the life curve like this, the blue arrow, that we're changing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, and that we have control which direction that arrow's going. So you are not growing old, but we are growing wiser. As I mentioned, there's such a wealth of wisdom and strength and just resilience, I know, in our collective room, in the audience. So again, I feel like I'm preaching to the wise. We are growing kinder. We do see that people are more patient as we get older. We become more humble. We learn what really matters, and that really is relationships. And we become more compassionate and generous. I really notice that in my patients as we travel through life. We become more understanding because we share more experience, and our loved ones share more experience as well. Oh, by the way, I'm throwing in kind of random pictures of one way that I've helped survive during the pandemic. So I started cycling home when I don't have any patient due to deliver in the next couple of days. So I ride through Central Park, and it's nice to be out in nature. So whenever you can, feel really connected to nature. It helps us kind of forget about all the little problems during the day, or some of the bigger problems that we don't need to worry about for the moment. So this is at Central Park in the last week, just a couple of days ago. Now, we sometimes are troubled by our emotions, but we have to recognize emotions are part of being human, and they really are the most valuable things to help us survive. That's why we're here, because we've had protective emotions. If we didn't get sad, we wouldn't be able to avoid the things that cause us pain. And if we didn't have anxiety, we wouldn't plan ahead. We wouldn't save for a rainy day. We wouldn't sound the alarm when there's danger, and we wouldn't run away from a beast that's attacking us. And without anger, we wouldn't defend ourselves or stand up for our loved ones. And finally, without love, we just wouldn't be here. So these are the two goslings that I saw at Central Park yesterday evening on the way home. But sometimes emotions can be overwhelming, especially with these circumstances. So I'll talk about 4 emotional health skills that are really good to get a refresher on. One will be just looking after ourselves physically and emotionally and managing stress. I'll talk about a little bit about meditation and reflection, and we'll do a little meditation exercise. So I hope all of you are at home and not driving a car. If you are, please pull to the side and park in case you get sleepy and really relaxed. And we'll talk about managing our thoughts, because sometimes our thoughts trigger the emotions. And believe it or not, you have choice over your thoughts. And then finally, visualizing your goals. So managing stress. So I always find it helpful if I'm feeling overwhelmed by stress to think about what it is that's causing me to feel stressed and recognize what aspects of my situation that I am able to change or control. So it's not usually a large part of it, but it could be some of it. So I need to accept what I can't change and what I need to accept right now, but assume responsibility for what I can control or change. So notice that I have a choice. When you realize that you do have some choice, and some agency or a sense of control, then actually can relieve our sense of feeling overwhelmed. And it takes away that feeling and the thought of helplessness. And it's all encapsulated in this serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what do we know about COVID-19? One of the major sources for stress. Well, we've known that it's airborne. It could be passed in the air and spread by respiratory droplets. That's why we avoid closed indoor environments where there's not good circulation or proper distancing from others. We know we can prevent those infections by keeping our distance of 2 meters or 6 feet from other people, wearing our face masks, unless you're having a virtual meeting like we are, and washing our hands if they do get soiled or touching objects that could be contaminated by those droplets. Finally, we know that the vaccinations work, and they are working. And I hope many of you have already had your first vaccine. And within 2 or 3 weeks, you have a good amount of protection, and even better after you get your booster shot in 16 weeks later. And remember, your family doctor is here for you. So although our offices are not open to seeing 30 patients a day, we're managing even more patients with telephone or video. And when we do need to assess you in person, we can make arrangements to do that. So I do see maybe 3 to 4 patients where we do need them to come in, because we can't diagnose everything by phone or video. So remember to call your family doc. If you have any problems, if you need to review your prescriptions, or you have chronic conditions that need monitoring, the labs are still open. We can still do a lot of things by telephone or video if you prefer. And if needed, we can still see our patients in person, but using lots of safety precautions in the office to keep you all safe. So don't forget to call your doctor. And of course, the everyday things that you probably tell kids and grandkids and best friends, how to look after yourself. So the daily management of stress is what a good parent would say to you. So what the doctor says to you is go out and play. Make sure you get a regular exercise routine, even better if it's outdoors, but of course, keeping our physical distance. So of course, this is a picture of my dad at our walk with your dog that we had a couple of years ago. In those days, we didn't have to keep a physical distance, but still going for a walk with friends where you're appropriately distanced. Don't skip your meals. So schedule regular healthy meals, even if your appetite's a little bit down. Please continue that good routine. and go to bed. Even though our sleep has been disturbed, we do need adequate rest, and we're allowed to take naps if we need to do it. We have to balance that physical activity, mental activity with adequate rest. And then finally, as I mentioned, don't hesitate to call your family doctor for any of your health needs as any time before. Their staff and the doctors are still in their offices by the phone, video, or needing to see you in person if needed. And of course, expressing our emotions is important and doing it in a safe way with people that you trust. So it's really important to maintain your group of loved ones and best friends that you can trust, and to know that you can still contact one another by phone and even by video, as all of you become so sophisticated. My dad is 91, and I'm so happy that he's able to Zoom meeting with his Burnaby neighborhood house, and so he can talk to all the people he used to meet in person. And it's really important to join a support group if you don't already have one. I have my own support group of a couple of colleagues that I meet up with regularly in a virtual way. And again, attend to your relationships. So one of the nice things about the pandemic, one of the few nice things, is that all my kids for a while were all in the home at the same time, working in their rooms, but we actually had dinner together every day. Two of my boys were working, but they're so lucky that they can do their jobs at home. And my daughter graduated from UBC studying from home as well. So that was a nice time. And for our pets, for our puppy Teddy, he's been so happy that we're around all the time. So those relationships, as I mentioned, that's what matters most. But I think the greatest tragedy is that we get so busy with our lives, with our work lives, or with finances, or with drama, that we forget to tell people and show people how much we love them. So I think the greatest tragedy in our lives is that people go through life not knowing how much they were loved. So don't miss an opportunity to show you care. And it's really important for us to express 5 positives for every negative. And that's because of how our brains work. We have survived because our brains pick up on things that are wrong and things that are negative. That helps us detect danger. It helps us check out to make sure we're doing the right thing. But it makes us more anxious. It makes us more judgmental. It makes us more critical. And it's so easy to find what's wrong with other people or with a situation. It makes us feel down and dissatisfied. But when we express the negatives and don't counter it with 5 positives, then it affects our relationships as well. People don't realize how much you value them, and we lose that sense of gratitude for one another. So with people, with your loved ones, before you make a criticism or have a negative comment, think of 5 positive things you're going to say first, before and after. And if it's too hard to think of 5 things, you better not say that negative. This really slows down the negative comments, by the way, because it's so much effort. But the more we do it, the easier it becomes. And then we're starting to see that the glass is more than half full. So that second key emotional health skill is meditation. So I use it to calm my mind when I'm stressed or overwhelmed, to center my thoughts, to assess my situation, and just to make sure what I'm saying and what I'm doing is aligned with who I really am and how I want to be for the other person. It's also good just as a pulse check or a compass check to reflect on our life, to make sure we're going in the right direction. One form of meditation is mindfulness, and I use that to really recenter and remain centered throughout the day. So I focused on the person in front of me or the important thing that I need to do right now. It also reminds me to enjoy life today. So when we feel strong emotions, I think of that as a meditation chime. When you feel a physical feeling of anxiety or a twinge of anger or frustration, I see that as a chime or a bell that goes off to remind me to pause and reflect on what am I feeling, what am I saying, and what am I doing. And it's good to reflect. It's like checking on the map to make sure you're going in the right direction. And it's important to frame each day with a particular meditation or a prayer of thankfulness. So I do this the first thing that I think of when I open my eyes in the morning. I say a prayer of gratitude. And that same thing, the last thing I do before I go to sleep, it's a prayer of thankfulness. And the first one I think about and gracious for is my wife next to me in bed. So thankful she is here. She's always by my side and supports me. And that my best friend for life. And then thinking about my children, my patients, my colleagues, and all of you, all that everyone is doing to make life worth living. So if you start your day with that, it really frames the day. That helps you to actively see those positives in our life. So the cup is not half full. By the time the day is over, for me, it's overflowing. Again, Central Park about a month ago when the cherry blossoms were out. So mindfulness is a type of meditation, but it's also an attitude. So people think of it as being centered on your breath or being centered on the taste that you're experiencing when you're eating, or being in nature and smelling the fresh flowers or feeling the breeze. So I'd like to take you through a little mindfulness exercise. So you can sit comfortably, and if anyone's in a car, make sure you're not driving and just park to the side. And just sit comfortably. You can shift and move around anytime you want. And you could gently close your eyes if it makes it easier. And just focus on the sensations and the sounds of your own breath. And don't force yourself to breathe slow or fast, but just notice your breath as it naturally comes, where you feel it the most. Maybe in your nose, in your throat, or in your chest or your belly. And if your mind wanders from the breath, just focus again on those sensations. The sensations of breathing in and breathing out. That's great. Now shift your attention to the sounds around you. Just notice sounds that come and go. Sounds around you in the room, and maybe sounds in the distance, or the sound of my voice. Now shift your attention to the sensations in your body. Some parts are warm, some are cooler, and some are really relaxed. And you could bring your attention back to with your eyes wide open and just reflect on if we attend to the sensations, the breath, or sounds just as they come without trying to control them. It settles us back to this sense of peace. And the more we practice this, we can start to quiet those restless thoughts or troublesome thoughts. So when we practice this every day, especially at times of stress, we can slow things down and be present for where we are in the present moment. With time, we start recognizing that we can accept things like the breath and sensations and sounds without trying to judge or control them. And with much of life, sometimes we just have to experience these changing sensations and thoughts and feelings without trying to control them or struggling against them. With time, we start recognizing thoughts that pop up and not getting lost in a train of thought. We just notice when we're having a worried thought or a worried feeling or a thought of judgment. And in a moment, I'll talk about how we can catch ourselves when we're falling into certain thinking traps that tend to make us distressed or unhappy. So with practice, we can all be masters of mindfulness, and it helps us recenter and to be present so that we can learn to enjoy every day and eventually every moment of every day. So the third skill is managing our thoughts. we tend to get lost in a train of thoughts and identify our identity with those thoughts. And then it gets really strong. We really strongly identify with their opinions and then get into big arguments over that. But the truth is, our thoughts shape our emotions. And if we can control and manage our thoughts with kindness and compassion, we can manage our emotions. So there's a skill called cognitive behavioral therapy. It sounds very technical, but it's something that we can do every day. And it's based on the fact that we can transform how we feel, our emotions, by what we do, our actions and behavior, and what we think, those thoughts. So there's a lot of common unhelpful thinking styles that we all fall into. We all do this. And you don't want to judge yourself in a negative way for having these thoughts, because we all do that. But it's helpful with that kind, compassionate mindfulness to recognize when those thoughts pop up and then decide if there's another way of looking at things if things are not working well with this pattern of thought. So I'll give you a few examples of how we can kind of counter in a kind and gentle way these particular thought traps. We call them cognitive distortions or thinking traps we all fall into. So number one is fortune telling, assuming that you really know how things will turn out. So none of us is mind readers. An example would be, I'll never be able to manage these feelings, or I'll always feel this way. But you can counter this fortune telling thinking by realizing that we can't predict the future. I can't predict the future, but I can be ready for whatever may come. The second thinking trap is mind reading, really believing you know how the other person is thinking and how they're feeling when they said or did something. For example, I know why she hasn't called me. She did that just to hurt me. That's really making an assumption you really know what's going on inside someone else's head or heart. And we can counter that with more wholesome thoughts like, I should give others the benefit of the doubt and maybe check things out with them. Overgeneralizing. This is making broad assumptions based on a few facts on hand. An example is, like, you can't trust anyone. They're all the same. And we can counter this with more perspectives of one rotten banana doesn't make the whole bunch bad, and other people are individuals just like me. Polarizing is also called all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, or good or bad thinking. For example, this pandemic is a disaster. There's nothing good in the situation. But as I already pointed out, there are some bonuses. For some of us, it's been really great, especially for pets, because their owners are home all the time. We sometimes have found ways to adapt and work together. And there's a lot of, there's been a wellspring of support from the community and numerous agencies helping to help those who are disadvantaged in every city and town. Or realizing that my situation is not so bad. I have some support that others don't. And this challenge has really brought out a lot of kindness from many other people. And the other good thing is I haven't had to see all my in-laws every single week. We've seen each other virtually periodically. Shoulding. This is like inappropriately judging things, such as everyone should wear a mask all the time, or I have to be perfect. And we can counter that with more thoughts that he may not realize that he wasn't wearing his mask properly. She's probably doing the best she can. Personalizing means taking things too personally when they're not intended that way. For example, thinking, he did that deliberately just to hurt me. Well, we can counter that by thinking something like, maybe he's having a bad day. I'll just let that go. And when we're really anxious, we tend to catastrophize, believing the worst case scenario is going to happen. For example, I'm going to fail and I'll never be a success. This really is the end of the world. I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die. You can counter this thinking by thinking, I'll prepare for the worst, but I know it's not likely to happen. And I know how to stay well, and I know where to get help. That's really true. Sometimes we disqualify the positive, especially when we're feeling down or sad. So that's downplaying the positive aspects of your situation or other people and minimizing the good things that you have done. For example, just saying, oh, I was just lucky that time, or there's nothing good in this situation. And we can counter that by thinking thoughts like, I'm learning and getting better. which you are. Our family and community have really come together to help one another, which is true. So if you want to learn more about cognitive therapy, these are some books that I recommend to a lot of my patients and friends and family. David Burns wrote the classic Feeling Good, and he's wrote a recent sequel that's worthwhile looking at from the library. Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman. Rick Hanson's book, Hardwiring Happiness. There is a program called Bounce Back. So it's bouncebackbc.ca if you can look on the computer. So it's actually a kind of a self-help cognitive therapy program that anyone can do. I've actually referred a lot of patients to that program. And it really is empowering and learning to recognize these troublesome thoughts and to be able to counter them a bit at a time. It's really a learned skill we get better with over time. And there's a really fantastic program I've referred a lot of patients to called the Cbt Skills Group. So it started with doctors in Victoria. They put together a really good manual and a series of about 8 group sessions that they do virtually online. So now it's opened up to people throughout British Columbia. So it's called the CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, CBT Skills Group, and it's free, and you can access it through your family doctor. So contact your family doctor if you think that might be helpful for you, if you suffer from mild or moderate anxiety or depression and are interested in learning more about cognitive therapy and mindfulness. So cognitive therapy is about reflecting on our thoughts that seem to trigger the difficult emotions and asking yourself, is there another way of looking at my situation? Another way of shifting that perspective is saying, what would I say to my best friend or a loved one if they were thinking these thoughts or feeling this way? It helps you shift that perspective. And the fourth emotional health skill I'd like to share is visualizing your goals. So you might remember from elementary school, Roget's Thesaurus. So that's that book that has synonyms, words that mean almost the same, and antonyms, words that mean the opposite. So you probably remember that from elementary school, maybe high school. But you probably didn't know that Roget was a physician. And he actually started creating a thesaurus because he was feeling really depressed. He had lost some loved ones, good friends, and he wanted to lift himself out of this sense of depression. So he started coming out with other words that meant the opposite of depression, like joy and peace and satisfaction and connection. So when we're stuck in a negative state, it's really helpful to think of the opposite. So that helps us move towards our goals. And then we can start doing things, planning things, and taking steps and getting support to move towards those goals. So I listen intently to my patients' list of problems. When I feel that I understand them, in order to have a plan of moving forward and solving them, I ask them to turn it around to look at what our goals will be. So instead of replaying the past or ruminating, replaying the negative, think about what you want. And finally, we should question our core beliefs because they kind of underlie these automatic thoughts that we have. Our core beliefs about ourselves, about the world, how the world works, about other people, and about life itself, the meaning of life and the purpose. So we've all accepted some incorrect beliefs about the world that don't seem to work well for us, and incorrect beliefs about other people and about ourselves. And I think life is about learning, growing in wisdom, and actually challenging our core beliefs that no longer work for us. And these beliefs really shape our worldview and how we tell our personal stories. So we all fall into these. I'll give some examples of some unquestioned assumptions and core beliefs that I've had and patients have had as well. Thoughts that are limiting who you think you are and what you can do. Like thinking, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be successful, I don't deserve to be happy or to have love, or the belief that you are powerless. Sometimes when we get praise as a child, we think that we have to be perfect in order to be loved because it seems to come with praise, although that's not what your parents intended. So that leads to perfectionism and a lot of self-judgment. Or if you've had some disappointments with other people, feeling I can't trust anyone, and if you've had a really hard life, that life is unfair. So if you have any of these negative core beliefs that are limiting, maybe ask yourself or talk it over with a friend that you trust to kind of challenge, are they working for me? And to ask that question is to see, do they bring you closer or further from other people? Do they bring you closer and further from your sense of connection and community with society? And do they bring you closer, further to your ultimate goals and the meaning in life? Do they foster positive feelings like love, connection, and peace? And do they inspire positive actions such as creativity, and kindness, and generosity? So I'd like to share a few positive core beliefs that I've come to acquire and reshape as I challenge my own negative core beliefs and limiting beliefs. I really believe that we're part of a greater whole, part of a family, and you are a member of this community. You and I each have a unique positive potential, and this is your gift to the world. And we are dependent on one another, and every one of us matters. I and you can make a positive difference with our actions, great and small. And I and you are continually learning and growing. We can each adapt to any change. Another limiting belief is this illusion of separateness, and that life is all about competition. And I really believe that the big problems in society and the world, including the pandemic and poverty and hunger and inequality and prejudice and war and racism, we can't solve these problems by people looking after themselves. And the inescapable truth is that you and I are not separate, independent individuals. And your well-being, my well-being, and the well-being of others are all dependent. Recognizing that you and I are global citizens, interdependent with every other person on this planet. What you say and do affects everyone and everything else. And when we realize this interdependence and this connection we have with one another and with nature and this planet, we'll start to see the positive evolution of humanity and life on Earth. But it begins with us. So together, let's be the change we wish to see. So I'd like to do a little exercise, if you'll humor me. I think we have a good amount of time. We'll leave time for questions at the end. So I'd like you, with eyes open or closed, just think about one other person that you don't know that well, or someone that you may have had a minor disagreement with. So not your best friend. So I want you to just imagine, with your eyes open or closed, you can imagine their face in front of you. And I want you to think these thoughts. I invite you to think these thoughts about that person as you see them in front of you. So this person was once a little baby held in the arms of his or her parents, loved and cherished, and helpless. This person was once a small child with lots of enthusiasm and dreams and excitement. This person has been loved by other people, has had friends. This person in front of you has had their disappointments, just like me. This person in front of you has had their share of tragedy and hurt and self-doubt, just like me. And this person just wants to be loved and to be happy, just like me. So we realize that we all go through our own tragedies and hopes and dreams, and that we all want the same thing, but we do it in different ways. And we bring to it our own beliefs and thoughts and experience that come from experience and good and bad things in the past. We can increase our compassion that those that cause us some suffering are suffering themselves. We come from a place of suffering, and that we want to send to them loving compassion as we want for ourselves, that they may be and that we may be healthy and happy, peaceful and safe. Thanks for sharing that with me. So when we think of all the things that are stressing us now, we recognize that these changes are only temporary, just like everything else in our life. That we will be together again in person. Next time we have a dialogue in aging, it will be in person. And we will value what really matters, one another, our relationships. And we're going to love one another even more than before. So it's really helpful, as I said, to visualize your goals. So I'd like to invite you to really engage your whole mind and all your senses with really positive imagery. And so we can start with just relaxing our breathing in relaxation and breathing out tension. Let any tension you might have in your muscles relax. Let yourself sit comfortably wherever you might be. And in this state, see yourself growing calmer and stronger. Feel yourself surrounded by care and compassion. Imagine us in the near future creating a better world we've created together, with each person making a difference. And it's helpful for us to visualize this because we will make it happen if each of us does this. And we'll each be feeling more calm and stronger, supporting one another. So be an agent of positive change in your own life, in your community, and in your world. So our thoughts and our feelings and our core beliefs really shape our stories. And we can tell our life stories in many different ways. So if your life story makes you feel helpless or hopeless or negative about the future, I invite you to challenge it, to share it with others, to share it with those close to you. And maybe they can share a positive perspective with their compassion and love. So I'd like to kind of share my mom's story. So my mom was born in 1931. She had a very difficult childhood, but it's a very inspiring story that inspires me still. So her father died when she was about 7 or 8. And then her mother died when she was 9. So my mom was born in Vancouver in the Strathcona area, close to Chinatown in Vancouver. And in all, there were 9 siblings. My mom was near the middle. The youngest was in diapers still, and the oldest, my Auntie Hazel, was still in her teens when both her parents died and they were suddenly orphaned. So they were dirt poor and they didn't have any family that came to help them. And my oldest aunties, Auntie Martian, Auntie Mamie, and Auntie Hazel, decided they were going to support the whole family and keep everyone together so they wouldn't be separated, and that all the kids, even down to the babies, would be able to get through school and they'd look after one another. And then they had another tragedy where one of my older aunties passed away as a teen in her sleep. So my mom's story has a lot of tragedy and tears and anxiety about safety, security, and staying together. But this taught my mom to give us the value that family sticks together and that love and dedication to one another will ultimately bring happiness. So those sisters and brothers stuck together, sacrificed themselves. My oldest auntie, Auntie Hazel, stayed home and she acted like the mom to the younger siblings. My other older aunties went to work, supported the family. Everyone did their part and they looked after one another. And that's why all my cousins and my surviving auntie, we get together every Boxing Day to kind of celebrate our love and these siblings that kept things together. So even 81 years later, after that tragedy, this is the result of transforming a really tragic beginning to one of love and perseverance and resilience. So my mom could have told her story differently, one of being a victim or feeling helpless, but it's a story of resilience. And she passed on that love and dedication for her family of siblings to her dedication to our family. So she looked after all our needs. And she really was the best example to me, someone that loved everyone unconditionally and saw the best in people and brought out the best in people. And her love went beyond her own family to everyone she met, to friends, to people in our church, to people in the community. And she was very active in the community until she suddenly died in 2003. And then after she died, it was a really hard not having her in my life. But I finally came to terms with it when I realized that the part of my mom that she gave me that's the most enduring and that made the greatest impact was her love. And that love she gave to me and my family and her friends and our community is a love that I still have to give forward to others. And as we're all part of the water cycle, we're all part of this love cycle. We receive love and benefit from people throughout our lives, teachers, coaches, parents, friends, and loved ones, and many strangers that we benefit from but can never thank in full. And our goal is to appreciate that love, to let it grow, and pass it on to others. So the best legacy I can give for my mom is to pass her legacy of love to my children, to my patients, to my community, to each one of you. And we're all part of this endless love cycle. And I think that is the point of life. So the way my mom transformed her story and how I view and think of the story of her life and her passing and how it shapes my stories has been empowering and inspires me still. So here's my family, and they know about all the love they received from grandma, even though they're young at that time. And they are loving kids that are passing on that care to other people in their lives. So engaging with life and coping with change. Change is that reality. It's part of life. It's part of who we are. It's the nature of all things. And it's futile to pursue and cling to things that don't last because nothing lasts. We have to appreciate what we have when we have it. Every gift we have, our loved ones, everything we can hold, a beautiful flower is not ours to hold forever. We must love and appreciate others while we can and let go when we have to. We need to accept what you cannot change, but accept responsibility to change what you can. Again, be an agent of positive change. Be dynamically responsive to these changes and seek out the positive potential of every moment. Because we can transform our minds as we age. Though our habits and thoughts of behavior seem to be hardwired, they're not. With effort and repetition and support, we can transform our minds and how we feel. This is how each of us adapts to a changing world. So we can each retell our life stories and see beyond this illusion of a separate, individual, smaller self. But it begins with us, each one of you and with me. We can all be agents of change. So together, let us be the change we wish to see.